either of you know how to pop the hood of a car?
Because real men hire other men.
AAA says they're 15 minutes away, and it's good to leave them something to do because it makes them happy.
You're a real philanthropist.
What is up, nerdtectives? Welcome back to another episode of Nerds at Night. I am your host, Blake Money Blakeweather. How is everybody doing? I've missed y'all. Welcome back to another week. And of course, you know, we're talking all about... Let's talk about this episode real quick. Can we first say we're all so glad that it's not last week's episode? There was a lot of funny laughs, right? We all got some funny laughs in last week's episode. But this episode was super stacked with like stories and clues and things that help us progress to like solving, well, in this case, the Dudinoff case, right? And then finally at the end, we got a little bit closer to solving Sazz's murder, or at least getting back on track to solving Sazz's murder, which launched this whole season, right? So I'm glad that we sort of reeled it in and got back to some things that really helped push the investigation forward. Also, we met Helga. Shout outs to Helga. I don't know if people thought we were going to meet her, not meet her. If we were just going to hear her over the radio, how big of a part she was going to play. But like, she's here. And it's so rather interesting to hear the Westie story, to hear her story, and now to see how she ties in with Sazz. Like, what's that about? I want to know more about that. Like, I wish we would have gotten a few more lines. Hopefully in the next episode, we do get a bit more backstory of how they knew each other, met each other, what their relationship was like. Because I still do have a few questions about her. I think it's a little late to bring in a killer, have her be the killer, right? It's a little late in the game. She's still going to be on our suspect board. We'll get to that a little bit later. But like, I don't think she's the killer, right? But like, no, it's interesting. It's interesting when you a locksmith and people got cameras in their apartments that they don't want in there. Oh no. How you know, if anybody could get in there of everybody so far, it would probably be her, but it's probably not her, is all I'm saying. But it's interesting to start thinking about things in that sense. And also we got verification of when Dudinoff died, but we figured that out last week, right? When I was like, hey, like Dudinoff had to have died years ago because these guys just kept cashing checks every month and they had to have been doing it for a long time. Also, it's verified. If you look at the date of the check that Helga got, you can verify which date it is. It's 3 years ago. So we know that that was the night the incinerator went off and that the Westies are saying that they kind of put Dudinoff to rest that night. All that to say, I really enjoyed this episode. Lots of little funny bits, lots of little funny cracks. And again, I'm just excited that we're back on track with trying to solve this murder and get things wrapped up, because if you look around all the YouTube sphere, all the Reddit sphere, everybody still has no clue. I think we're all in agreement of like who the killer is, and we'll get to that. Marshall, right? Let me just say, but if you in case you guys want to fast forward to a different part, Marshall, everybody's in agreement that it's Marshall, right? He's been top of our board since the beginning, since like the very first episode. That boy been up there. So we've known he's a little sus, right? But besides that, in the YouTube sphere, in the Reddit sphere, nobody really knows motivation. Nobody knows who a second or third killer might be. Nobody knows. There's a whole bunch of speculation. And I think by this point in Only Murders in the Building, at least for the people that do YouTube content, they kind of have it semi-figured out by about now. So either that's a really good thing that the show is doing by like throwing everybody off track, or it's a really bad thing of the show not giving us enough clues to be able to solve it at this point. And hopefully the cat lands on its feet by the end of the season and this all wraps up with a nice pretty bow, right? That's the only direction you can go at this point, given that like nobody can solve this case. I think walking into this season and like seeing the interviews, and I know the dude that plays Howard was like, he didn't know who the killer was until episode 9. I was like, I think we could all solve it by episode 8. Nope. Past Blake, you're wrong, right? Cannot solve it just yet. We still need a bit more clues. But once we get to our suspect board, I think we can start to narrow down and whittle down things and hopefully just be a few steps closer to solving the mystery of who killed Sazz. So that's sort of the long and short of my review for this episode, but let's get right into doing what we usually do. So if you've tuned in before, you know how this works, and if you haven't, welcome all my new little Westies. First things first, we're going to go over our rules for solving a murder mystery, then we'll go over our recap and clues, and then finally we're going to rank people on our suspect board as we get ever so closer to the end of this season. Now let's talk about our rules for solving a murder mystery, because we know murder mysteries work in a certain way, they operate in a certain way, they follow certain rules, and we as nerdtectives have certain rules to go ahead and solve any murder mystery. So what are these rules, you might ask? Rule number 1, you gotta have suspects. Rule number 2, you gotta have clues. Rule number 3, you gotta have motivation. Rule number 4, you gotta have opportunity. And always rule number 5, you have to have red herrings. We use all of these rules to solve any murder mystery, whether it's a TV show or a movie. So of course, with these rules in mind, let's go ahead and go over our recap and clues and see what information we can piece together to solve this case. So as usual, grab a coffee, grab a beer, grab a whiskey, and let us begin. We start off the episode with Professor Dudenoff narrating and describing Alfred Hitchcock's The Lifeboat. We see the Westies in the past gathering in the West Tower with an invite from the professor. And we finally see Helga. Dudenoff invites them in with an offer to change their lives. We see our podcast crew leaving Strong Island and heading back to the city, but along the way, Charles's car breaks down. While waiting for AAA, they run through the facts of the case they know so far. The actor group gives them a call and wants to meet up with the podcast crew, but knows the Arconia is not safe. They all end up meeting at the movie set and start to game plan how to get the Westies to tell their story. Eugene wants to use a game plan involving Tony Danza, and Eva thinks they should use a soap opera ding-dong method, bringing in a surprise guest to help interrogate them. Mabel decides they should invite the Westies over to play a big game of Oh Hell. Oliver gets a call from Loretta and tells everyone he's getting married during the upcoming weekend, and Eva shows Mabel her facial toner that also has a recording feature with auto-tune. Zach talks to Oliver about his upcoming wedding and suggests some colorful antics to add to the festivities. Eugene approaches Charles and wants to check to see if he's okay, and if he could see Charles in his full anger form. Charles doesn't want to go full Hulk mode yet and does his best to keep his cool. The podcast crew and the actors all gather composure prior to the Westies coming over to Oliver's. The Westies make it over for Oh Hell and bring a jamon as a game time snack, but then they go full villain mode and Rudy draws a knife and Anna takes their phones. Vince sits them down so the Westies can explain their backstory with Dudenoff. We see the Sazz family met Dudenoff at their restaurant and were the first to start playing Oh Hell with him. Rudy gives his story of meeting Dudenoff 8 years ago in his film class and goes into a full monologue from the movie A Few Good Men.
And this, what's this? That is a ham radio.
Vince also gives his story of meeting Professor Dudenoff in his film class at a later time than Rudy. Vince and Dudenoff bond over their appreciation of films, and Vince is now added to the Oh Hell crew. Vince explains Dudenoff's wife used to rent the apartments on the floor as they became available, and would use them to teach music or allow struggling students to stay there. Instead of choosing to live alone on the floor, Dudenoff decides to allow his new friends to stay in the apartments. Vince says Dudenoff's dream was to move to Portugal, and he admits they've been cashing his checks and haven't seen the professor since he moved. Just as he's done, the crew gets a surprise ding-dong guest, and it's Helga. Helga tells her story of meeting Dudenoff as a locksmith. Dudenoff makes convo with Helga about the theme song to Perfect Strangers and says he always loses his keys. With his new lock installed, he decides to make the code Oh Hell. He then invites Helga to Oh Hell night. Helga later gets a goodbye note from Dudenoff saying he was moving to Portugal with a check dated 1/22/2021. Helga notices the lights go on and off and knows that the incinerator can cause this to happen. Helga says once Dudenoff left, the rest of the Westies started acting weird. Helga says she listens to the Only Murders podcast and hears about the weird things happening to the podcast crew and suspects the Westies may be involved. She thinks they had something to do with the power surge and Dudenoff's appearance, but has no proof. Mabel asks the Westies what they know about Dudenoff's metal joint, and they deny knowing anything. Charles finally has a nonverbal breakdown, and Vince takes the crew to his place to dig in further on Dudenoff's disappearance. He says the Westies all got an invite from Dudenoff except for Helga. We see the Westies all meeting Dudenoff in the basement, and he admits he has some medical news that says he only has a few months left to live. Dudenoff, on the brink of ODing on pills, instructs the Westies to burn his body and keep cashing his checks to make it look like he's still alive and to tell anyone else that he moved to Portugal. Before he passes, he wants to record one last film for Helga so he can say his piece to her. The Westies and Helga make up, and we find out Eva recorded the convo on her facial toner. Mabel then decides they won't use the recording to incriminate the Westies.
Why can't we ever get a ding-dong when we run out of leads?
Oh, a knock-knock ding-dong.
Helga stops by to say hi. She's reclaimed Hammy Faye from Howard and wants to tell the crew something about Sazz. She says she met Sazz through the ham radio and that Sazz told her about a stuntman protege. Helga says Sazz informed her that this person was harassing her and was dangerous and would be the death of her. The podcast crew looks up the movie Sazz was talking about, only to find the stunt person working on the movie was Glenn Stubbins. Did Glenn get the metal plate after working with Sazz on a movie? Also, why was his trigger finger twitching? Is this to make us think he was Sazz's shooter? Will he end up being the rogue stuntman that Sazz was worried about, or is it someone else? Also, why weren't the brothers sisters brought up in any of the Westies' origin stories? In this episode, we find out Helga was a locksmith. So does this mean that Helga is the reason that Sazz had keys to everyone's apartment? Was Sazz investigating just the podcast plot holes out of curiosity, or because she was working on a script? How did Helga know the incinerator created a power surge? Also, we still need to know where Rudy was the night of Sazz's death. Next, is this crew assistant possibly the person that Glenn recognized when he said this?
Ah, when'd you grow the beard, lassie?
Also, who was the person that left the notes and poisoned Winnie? Because we know the Westies did not confirm it was them. So that was the recap and some of my thoughts and questions about some of the things that happened in this episode. But let me hear from y'all. What things, big or small, stood out to you? Was it maybe the conversation with Zach and Oliver about his wedding? Was it something else? Did I leave out something? Let me know in the comments if I left out like a big clue that you think that like really stood out to you that could be helpful in solving Sazz's case, or could be helpful in determining if somebody still from the Westie side is lying. But on that note of hearing from y'all, I need to give y'all the biggest of shout outs to everybody who commented last week, because in stunning fashion, like y'all tend to do every single week, last week's episode was the most commented episode that we've had all season. And I am just blown away. I don't really have any words. Like, thank y'all so much. Why y'all keep hanging out? Why y'all keep hanging out here? Like, what? There are so many places you could be. Y'all choose to hang out with me. And I just feel so, it makes me feel so happy. And it brings me so much joy. Y'all come and want to hang out with me and just talk some shit about this show and just give some of the best comments and theories. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. Thank y'all so freaking much. Like, it blows me away. It blows me away. I didn't even ask for it. I don't even ask for these things. Y'all just do it. Y'all just make it happen. And I know maybe sometimes it brings y'all a lot of joy. Like I read your comment, whatever. It brings me a lot of joy to just see how much y'all are interacting with each other in the comments, how many times y'all comment, just to hear beautiful things from y'all, positive feedback, crazy, great theories. I can't even begin. Again, I don't have the words. I don't have the words. I knew that I was going to say something about this, but I didn't even know what I was going to say. So I appreciate every single one of y'all and every single second and minute. You guys, again, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Stole that from Jay-Z. On that note, though, since we are talking about comments, let's ride the wave and let's get into some of the comments that you guys left last week. All right, this first comment is kind of a two-parter, so I'm going to read the person who left a comment and then the person who left a reply because it's pretty hilarious. So this first comment comes in from Teneme Art Studios. Man, I was dying this episode. It was so funny. Quote, I call it a sweaty Betty. It's almost entirely vodka and Crystal Light with a little laughing face. And the reply from Anti-Social makes it so much better. She says, my daughter and I watched the show together and we cracked up at that. My signature drink is vodka and liquid Crystal Light lemonade. That's actually quite funny. So I really enjoyed that comment. And again, this just goes to y'all interacting with each other. This is so lovely to see. And it's so funny that this hit somebody. I just imagine you being with your daughter and your daughter's like, Ma, you drink that. And you're just like, bruh. Our next comment comes in from Chris Wall 3922. Something I noticed when Howard is trying to reach Mabel from the bodega to tell her about his findings, he's eating a Christmas tree cake. Not that strange, except it's April. This show has taught me the clues are in the minute details. So now I'm watching Christmas all the time, guy. Yeah. Where was Rudy during the time of the shot? They should have asked him, Rudy, you're missing. Where were you? They didn't ask him nothing. That's sort of a loose problem I have with this show currently. And I'm not the only one, but like the podcast crew be asking so many questions. They be interrogating people in these previous seasons. And now they're just like, yeah, you told me a story and like, you're good. Like they don't got no more follow-up questions. No, we all got questions. I got questions. Where was Rudy? he could still be sus. That's an interesting catch. I like that, Chris Wall 3922. I like that a lot. Our next comment comes in from Constance Campbell 4610. Quote, toilet pork. I love it. What else are we calling the hamon? I heard my boy Ivan Montero. Y'all need to go follow him. He called it toilet ham. That's another term for it. What would we like to officially call it? Just toilet pork. That's what it is. It's not bathroom bologna, right? It's clearly some sort of ham. I don't know. I don't know. Think of a good term, but so far toilet pork stuck. I don't know. I just be freestyling and I just be talking and I just be rambling and sometimes crazy things come out of my mouth. I'm so glad that you love just a little one-liner that I throw out there. But if anybody has like a proper term for it, let me know in the comments. Our next comment comes in from Andy0302, and I'm just going to read the top portion of it because it's very interesting. It's interesting to consider what Sazz, Dudenoff, and Glenn all had in common. Could the killings be about Bulgarian metal joint replacements? Sazz had so many as a stuntman, Glenn probably does too, although we only hear about the plate in his head, and Dudenoff was identified by his. I feel like it's staring us in the face that all the victims had this in common. So we know that Sazz, her joints were Bulgarian, but not Dudenoff's because his were in English, right? That's how they were able to identify the left because it clearly said left in English. And Sazz's, or what we think is Sazz's, right? If she's dead, that was in Bulgarian, and that's verified by Charles. But it is interesting. All these people have joints, right? Could there be something to it? I don't know. Like, that would have been a cool comment even more if we didn't find out that Dudenoff just sort of like peaced out, took some pills and peaced out. Because now it's just like, oh, he was outie. He was outie. He did it on his own terms. He just happened to have, a joint, right? A replacement joint. But we don't know his background. He could have been a stunt person. He could have been in Hollywood prior. We don't really know his background prior to being a professor. So that does sort of seem to be a thread though. Like all these people are getting shot or getting off, like they all have like these replacement joints. Could there be something to it? I don't know. This isn't Repo Man, right? Where they're taking back like replacement parts. Maybe not the old one, but the new one. It didn't have Jude Law and like Forrest Whitaker in it or something like that. I don't know, but I know they be taking people's parts, right? So this doesn't seem like that. But it is rather interesting that they have that thread of connection with each other. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the connection might be. I like that you said it's staring us right in the face that there is something in common. And that is the thing. But now we have to ask why. And I don't know if we have enough evidence to answer the why just yet. But maybe after this next episode, we will. Good comment right there, Andy0302. Next comment comes in from AWW6T. This episode demonstrated the principle that people from different backgrounds may see things you don't. The point being that Sazz, as a master stunt performer and expert in Charles, as his best friend, may have noticed something wrong with the script that nobody else is qualified to notice. That's a great point. And it's even verified here when Helga says that Sazz was contacting her about the plot holes in there, right? But why, right? We have to ask, why did she care about the plot holes? Was it that she's just trying to like connect dots in her own head to try and like help out the trio and be like, dang, somebody might be on to y'all. They're still in the apartments. You guys may be in danger. Maybe that was a sensitive thing that she wanted to talk to Charles about. I don't really know, but this comment right here, is verified in this episode. She was qualified. She was looking into it. Or was it because she was writing a script, right? Like that seems to be a very popular theory going around. I'm halfway in on it because we don't get so far. I wish they would have given us like something in here to be like, hey, this is a weird half-finished script thing that we found at Sazz's or something. Or why does she have Marshall's script here, right? Or something like that. Something where her name was attached to something. And maybe by this point it's gotten erased, but like just to find something in her apartment that would have like connected her to be like, that's weird. Like she's got this typewriter or like she's like writing this thing or like, I don't know, something that says that she possibly, we look back at it. We're like, oh, she was starting the script. Oh, these are the remnants of her starting this. Oh my goodness. She really was writing the script. And obviously if Marshall turned it in, He's guilty, right? How'd you get his hands on it? I don't know. But yeah, good point right there, AWW6T. Very good point right there. Again, of something that was verified in this episode. You guys be doing that sometimes. You ask a question from a previous episode, and then it has relevance for the next episode. It's so great. Our next comment comes in from Prior to Popular for episode 8. The fact they haven't suspected Marshall at this point when he's so suspicious from the beginning makes me think he must be involved. Otherwise, he surely would have had his moment in the spotlight as a suspect by now. The heavy-handed "he may be the death of me" clue with Glenn made it clear Glenn is a red herring. Or maybe he was Marshall's accomplice to move the body, as he's a physical dude being a stuntman. But he's not the mastermind or main killer. That much is obvious. And I still think the theory that he recognized Marshall in the hallway and that's why he was shot is a strong one. This is interesting, and this is really good because we did have Marshall narrate an episode, right? It was episode 5, right? When we see him, he's introduced and we see him, gluing the little hair on his face and getting the script over to Bev and celebrating and all that. We see sort of his backstory, but we only see a portion of it, right? There's still so many questions about Marshall and his they interrogated him, but it was like so short. It was like, "Where were you?" And he's like, "Oh, I was at this place." Okay, cool. Next question, right? Like they just sort of marked him off and he's like, "Okay, you're good. You clearly have an alibi." Of a video, mind you, that we've never seen. And also doing an hour-long set. No effing way. No way. I don't believe that. I don't know anybody that has not talked about like the fact that he cannot do an hour-long set. Like that's clearly crazy, right? If they bring it up in the show, we talked about it here first, right? Like that is just absurd. And yeah, obviously, right at the end of the episodes when there's a finger pointing to another character, we know typically, right, it's not that character. Like remember at the end of episode 9, the finger pointing goes to the producer mom, right? But then we think it's her the halfway through the episode, and then we'll realize like halfway through that episode, we're like, "Oh my God, it's not her." But the finger pointing was to her. I think the only time where that happened, right, where a finger pointing goes to somebody and we're like highly suspicious of them and it ends up being them, was in season 1 when they realize the thing is a bassoon cleaner, and then we're like, "Oh my gosh, like freaking Jan, dude." And then Jan ends up being the killer, right? We're like, "Oh my goodness, how wild." But I think that's what's happening here, not the Jan situation, but the finger pointing situation where we're like, clearly it's this person. And it's not this person. It's not Glenn. I think at most, right? Let's talk about this real quick. I think at most, Glenn maybe shot Sazz. Why? Don't know. Again, I'm just gonna walk a theory. You can be like, "Blake, you're wrong." Hear me out. This is one thing. I don't necessarily believe this. This is one thing though, as I was thinking about this. Glenn could have been the one to shoot Sazz, right? But obviously he would need access to, an apartment. He'd have to shoot from there. So there's some plot holes here, right? But hypothetically, he shot Sazz. Now he has this mental trauma. Now he wants to he becomes friend of the group. Now he wants to rat on himself and whoever, hired him or he's working with, right? I like that he may be an assistant with Marshall. He might have assisted in this, maybe even move the body. Who knows, right? Maybe he didn't shoot, but he could be involved. And when he recognized Marshall, right? Again, that was a pretty big telltale, right? Recognizes Marshall, gets shot in the same episode. Like, hello, like what are we talking about here? But also, let's think about this. Even if he recognized Marshall, it might have just been from the bar Concussions. Let's think about this. Concussions is clearly a bar for stuntmen. Was Marshall a stuntman before he was a writer? We don't really know. We don't know his background. But what's interesting is in this episode, right, we see that there's an assistant person, and maybe perhaps the show does a lot of things on purpose, including casting. We see Marshall as a Asian American, and then we see the assistant is an Asian American, and she's a lady, right? Perhaps, I'm going to throw a crazy theory out there, right? I don't know who's talked about this. Perhaps this is all orchestrated by Bev Mellon. Maybe Marshall is just guilty of stealing the script. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the extent of his superpowers into this. Maybe that assistant was also a stunt person prior to being an assistant. Maybe that stunt person went to Concussions. Maybe Glenn Stubbins saw that assistant, and maybe seeing the assistant became friends, whatever. And so when he sees Marshall, I mean, he clearly has a little brain trauma. So we got to give him a little break, right? But he sees Marshall and he's like, "Oh, you look like this person. that I met at the bar, are you that person with facial hair? Like, when'd you get facial hair, right? Because clearly he says lass. That person is a lady. That's a lass right there, right? That could be another theory. I've sort of read that as well, and I was putting 1 and 2 together. It's an interesting theory. I don't know if you would just introduce a character like that. I don't know. I don't know how much stake I put into that theory, because I don't know if you introduce a killer, just like, oh, we've never met this person, we've never even talked to this person, and like, here they are and they're a killer. But it could be interesting. Like, we need to think of Bev as like sort of a mastermind and could be orchestrating and pulling all these strings. And Glenn maybe did have some problems on set with Sazz and maybe did have some crazy things happen. But I think the long and short of it is, I think we find out he didn't kill Sazz, and hopefully he wakes up out of his coma, and hopefully he at least gives us some sort of clue that will point to, hey, this was actually the stunt person that was training with us or was protegeing with us or what have you. And this is the person you need to be looking for. Great comment prior to popular. Our next comment comes in from Cabby Stevens 5167. Is Sazz dead? Could she have had her shoulder replaced with a new replacement and the one in the incinerator is her first replacement? She could have faked her death that way. Again, we haven't seen no body. I mean, obviously we got some joints, but like, there's still some things that don't add up, and 1 and 2 ain't making 3. You know what I mean? She could have actually set this all up. But what was she burning, right? If it was her, if she did fake her death, right? What was she burning? Because the incinerator went off. So what were you burning? There had to be something you were burning, right? There's ashes in there and yada, yada. What were you burning? That's all I want to know, is why the incinerator was turned on, why the showmanship, I guess, to cover tracks, right? But like, what was in there? Like, that's the big question now. What was, if she did fake it, what was in there? It would have been a smart move, right? She's got all the x-rays plastered at her home, and then to have some of those parts in the incinerator, smart move to cover your tracks. What did the incinerator burn up would be my follow-up question to that. This could absolutely be real, and we could see Sazz return in episode 10, and this is all some sort of big shell game for some reason that we don't even realize. Super good comment there, Cabby Stevens 5167. Our last comment comes in from Sandlix Turk. I think the person who killed Sazz is Marshall, which was a stunt double and was around Sazz and stole her script and killed her, which is why Ben's stunt double recognized him, asking, when did he grow a beard? The Westies were probably the ones writing the notes as they were trying to cover up Dudenoff passing away. So this is a two-part thing. One, with the notes, we don't get that verified by the Westies. They don't take credit for it. So there's still somebody out there, right? There is still somebody eyeballing our podcast crew, and we don't know who it is. And two, the Marshall theory, which is what I was talking about earlier. There's a popular theory. This is the one that's taking off. Marshall is the killer. Marshall stole the script. Marshall got that 2010 vision. Marshall be seeing the future. That's how good his eyesight is. Marshall. Somebody's a fan of Brady Bunch, got that one. But yeah, it makes absolute sense given all the clues that we have. Will anything shake up in this next episode? We will see. But as for now, this is probably the theory that makes the most sense, that Marshall is the one who stole the script and shot Sazz. But now let's talk about this real quick. How do you have access to Dudenoff's apartment? The only way he could have gotten there was the brother sisters, but he's supposed to be in LA. Did Bev have something to do with this? I don't really know. Did Marshall perhaps know Helga, who can obviously get into any room, including the Dudenoff room? She knows the code. She set it up. Do these two know each other? I know that Ivan Montero had this theory way long ago, like 2 or 3 episodes ago. I'm not fully on board, but I'm not off board, right? And now we have even more proof. But again, Helga is a locksmith. I don't know. I think Helga has a bigger part to play. Maybe she didn't kill anybody, but like she could be manipulated or assisted or something else beyond what we're seeing. But also, if it's her, why would she shed light on, possibly a pathway that could get somebody that she knows caught up? Which, to counter that, throwing shade to Glenn Stubbins while he's in a coma, that's a good way to throw off the scent off the track, if you know what I mean. Sandlix Turk, great comment right there. Y'all, those were awesome comments. Let's keep them coming. I can't wait to see what y'all have to say about this latest episode. So many clues, so much more information to help us solve this case before the ending. Again, y'all are awesome per usual. And also, as usual, y'all know what time it is. It is suspect board time, and we have some work ahead of us because we got a lot of solid information, and we got possibly a new suspect. So let's go take a look at what we got. Okay, y'all, I moved around some people, moved some people to the bottom off the board so that way we can rearrange them. So let's look at what we got so far. highly suspicious. We still have Bev Mellon. We still got Marshall. Man, I totally forgot about Dr. Maggie, but she could be in the wings, right? She could be the one orchestrating this whole thing, depending on, Marshall, if he was a stunt person or if that assistant person was a stunt person. Somebody was a stunt person. They could have been reporting to her and she could have been giving out, hey, Sazz says she's writing the script. Let's take it. Let's get some credit. Let's, yada, yada. Man, she could be orchestrating this too. It could have nothing to do with Bev Mellon. Bev Mellon could just be weird, but for sure it has something to do with Marshall. Man, we're keeping Dr. Maggie right there, especially if we get a reference to her in this next episode. Oh my gosh. That could be the connection point, right? Because it's a connection point between Sazz and Glenn, right? They both knew Dr. Maggie. Dr. Maggie got a lot of secrets. She got that Vulcan death grip. You know what I mean? Be putting you to sleep. I don't know, man. She got a lot of tricks up her sleeve. So we need to keep an eye on Dr. Maggie. She's staying highly up there. Loretta. I'm going to move Loretta down. Finally, right? Everybody's like, finally. I'm going to move her down to probably not, even though she left town the day after Sazz died. I'm still suspicious of that is all I'm saying. But she's getting married. And I think we all know what's probably going to happen. Either Jan's going to get capped or Loretta's going to get capped or poisoned or stabbed or something's going to happen during that wedding with one of the classic characters. We're going to be like, oh my goodness, man, what is going on, So finally, yes, I'm moving Loretta down. And now at the bottom, we got our Westies. We got Helga. Put her on the board, right? I'm not saying that she's a killer, but I'm not saying she's innocent yet. That's all I'm saying. And we got Glenn, right? Obviously had to move everybody down based on this episode. So let's go through some of the easy ones, right? We got the Sauce family. We're going to go into probably not. We're just going to go. I'm going all the way with probably not. They probably didn't kill Sazz. I'm even going to go Vince Fish. Probably not, right? We knew they had a secret. I didn't suspect it had something to do with Sazz, but they just seemed a little off. Still seems off. Anna still seems a little off. I want to move her up, but I'm not gonna, but I want to. Again, she's just kind of a little weirdo, bro, But anyways, I'm moving them all to probably not. I want to move Glenn Stubbins. We're going to move him. I think he was in maybe. We're going to move him back to maybe. And we're going to move, Rudy. We moved him there last time, right? So some of this hasn't changed. But should we move Rudy up, right? Again, until I know where he was the night of the murder, I just want to put him on highly suspicious. Like, he could be in on this, right? Somehow, some way. Maybe he goes and hangs out at concussions. Maybe he was a former stunt guy. I don't know. No, but he wants to be an actor, clearly, right? But like, maybe dude did some stunts. I don't know. He was an extra, right? Extras, stuntman, like, there's a thin line there between stuntmen and extras. Oh no. I want to know where he was. And also with Glenn, what does he know? Did Glenn take any actions prior to meeting the crew that endangered the life of any of them or Sazz? I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. There's not a whole bunch of proof, but also, again, the finger pointing going to Glenn means likely he didn't at least commit the act, right? Like, that would be some shit if like they finger point, they clear him, and then episode 10 we go back to him. Like, it's an interesting take, right? But likely he didn't do it, but he's still got, I'm leaving him a maybe because he for sure knows some sort of secret, and hopefully he can come out of that coma that he's in and peel back some of those layers and just give us the littlest breadcrumbs that lets us know who's behind this all. And I'm also going to move Helga there. Not because I think she's a killer either, but again, she knew Sazz. How'd she know Sazz? Again, the incinerator goes off. Has she been living there long enough to know when the incinerator goes off that the power goes off? Has she talked to somebody that had seen the incinerator go off and the power goes off and they told her, hey, you see the power go off, incinerator goes off, right? Like, how did she know, right? Was she in town when Sazz died? Like, that would be interesting if she was the one who pressed the button and killed Sazz. But yeah, I don't know. Helga could be involved somehow. Could have helped Sazz fake her death. Could have not. But it's just a little weird. Also, she's a locksmith. Has access to everywhere. I think it's very telling that Sazz has a key for all the apartments. So she says, like, do I have a key? Do I not have a key? That's a question, How would she get that? Helga's her bestie, right? Or at least her radio bestie. Helga didn't never say that they met in person, though. So there's also that. But also Helga could be keeping some secrets, Who knows? We're not going to trust anybody with anything. We can only trust our podcast crew at this point, right? So she's on a maybe just because I think she knows a little bit more than she's admitting that she knows. Clearly, that's validated by the end of this episode when she gives our podcast crew a few more breadcrumbs for them to go off on their next adventure in the next episode, right? So that's why she's in maybe. I, again, don't think she's a killer, but just I think there's some more information behind her. Rudy's going to stay there till we know where he's at, and Glenn's going to stay there until we know what he knows, or perhaps maybe he assisted in something and then strongly regrets it, has like mental trauma, the whole rat thing, right? Like, because he's going to rat out on whoever, you know, the crew that he was involved with. He's going to be the rat. So he starts to manifest rats in his head or see rats, right, as like a sort of a visual manifestation. These rats don't exist, but you know, I don't know. I don't know much about psychological shit like that, but that could be a thing. So this is our board currently. Again, in the next episode, if we see Charles's sister, maybe I'll throw her on. But as for now, this is our board. And even if we don't, if we hear something about Charles's sister and her husband or something, again, I think it's a little late in the game to be throwing in, you know, suspects like 7 episodes in. Like, what? Like, but, you know, clearly she'd probably come for a wedding, right? So we'll probably see her in episode 10. But if we hear a mention of her or something alluding to, hey, there was this lady or and she had a cop husband or something, then we got to be like, oh, dang, like, what is his sister doing? What is she involved with, right? But yeah, this is our board this week. Let me know where you have everybody ranked up on your board. Let me know who your highest suspect is. Again, it's going to be one of these 3 at the top: Bev, Marshall, or Dr. Maggie, or a combination of the 2, right? And it could be somebody else too that we even have in the probably not or the maybe. That's going to be the crazy part, right? That's going to be the crazy twist. It's somebody else that we didn't suspect because they just threw us off their scent the whole time. But hopefully by this next episode, we can have, like, if there's 3 killers, we can have 2 of them figured out. If there's 4 killers, we can have 3 of them figured out. Hopefully we can figure out at least 60, 70, 80% of this case. In no sense of the word, in any murder mystery do you ever figure out fully the motive, but maybe we can get kind of close, right? So that is it from me, and that is it from our suspect board. If there's anybody else that sticks out to you or any sort of theories that maybe I missed or something I need to think about, let me know in the comments. As usual, I appreciate all the time that you guys spend here hanging out with me. Hopefully we can crack this case together before the end of the season. I think we can. I believe in us. Like Bob the Builder used to say, right? Can we do it? Yes, we can. But yeah, this has been another great episode hanging with y'all. Thank y'all so much for making this whole season such a success. And again, for all the comments that help me think about these new theories that I'm thinking about or connect these dots or stuff that I miss, right? Because I cover a lot, but I miss some stuff here too, right? So I'm not perfect, but neither are any of the YouTube content creators. So we're all trying our best. Let's see if we can solve everything, though, after this next episode. I can't wait to hear from y'all. In the meantime, though, feel free to follow the channel if you're not already subscribed, or follow us on X or Instagram, Nerds at Night. That's all it is. Go ahead and check us out. And if you're on the social medias, I'd love to hear from y'all. I'm very personable. Just reach out. Be like, Money Blake, added you from YouTube. You can find me at Money Blake, whether Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. I am not hard to find. Again, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I can't wait to hear from y'all if y'all want to reach out to me. And again, I appreciate all of y'all's time that y'all get to spend here with me. This episode was way better than last week's, and I'm excited about the next 2 episodes that we're getting into as we wrap up this season. And let's wrap up this episode. Thank y'all so much for spending some time here, whether it's morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time you're listening to this. I do appreciate you. And until next week, I will see you. Peace.